Hi, this is Geos, and I'm making a video response in response to BlueTunisia, who is a commenter on Chris's video, and he made a comment in response to mine that was just completely ludicrous, and I had to make a video response to it because YouTube's comment system is under maintenance right now, or for some other reason isn't working. Now let's start by reading what he wrote. He said, Bush said Wall Street got drunk, but who was giving them the alcohol? The American government rubber stamped these banks and loans with the FDIC and Fannie and Freddie. Also, the Federal Reserve of the U.S. kept interest rates artificially low through heavy money creation from 1981 to 2004. On top of that, the government bailed out these bastards and took over their toxic assets, misspelled there, but oh well, assets. This is a government-created crisis. And that's so wrong, it's laughable. Every single thing you said is completely wrong. Now, first of all, you said Wall Street got drunk, but who was giving them the alcohol? Okay, nice little analogy, but it's not really saying much. Okay, then you say the American government gave them the alcohol, is what you're trying to say rhetorically, and you're saying that they rubber stamped the banks and the loans with FDIC and Fannie and Freddie. Okay, that's completely wrong. The private banks are the ones who gave out those subprime loans who caused the current recession. Now, just because they sold these loans and packaged them up for Fannie and Freddie doesn't mean Fannie and Freddie are responsible. Well, the FDIC, on the other hand, they're partially responsible because they should have been regulating it. But just because they didn't stop this doesn't mean they're completely responsible. It's like saying if I go out and commit a crime and the police don't catch me before I do it, is it the police's fault? Now that's just ludicrous because it obviously is my fault, okay? Now, you also said that the Federal Reserve kept interest rates artificially low through heavy money creation from 81 to 2004. Now, that doesn't even make any sense. If the interest rates are low, then it's just easier to borrow from the Federal Reserve. Now, the role of the Federal Reserve in respect to interest rates is to try to keep inflation low. So when the interest rates are high, that means there's high inflation, so it's harder to borrow money, and therefore, it lowers inflation. It controls, it constricts the money supply, so to say. Now, creating money, that's something we just started doing recently. I mean, creating money will actually increase inflation. And if they created a whole bunch of money like you said, then they would have to increase interest rates, not keep them artificially low, because that's not, it doesn't even make any sense, dude. And then you say on top of that, the government bailed out these bastards and took over their toxic assets. So basically what you're saying is, okay, the government rubber stamped whatever the private banks were doing, and just let them, said, okay, do this and do that, and then it got us into this mess. That's completely wrong. The government had very little to do with this, and if they would have stepped in and stopped these motherfuckers from doing this shit, we might be in a better situation. But since they didn't, you could blame them for not doing anything, but you can't really say they're responsible. How is it that the government created the crisis when these markets that ultimately caused the biggest collapse, back in 08 late '08. Those were caused by, the derivatives market, okay? Caused by collateralized debt obligations, credit default swaps. Now, these things are what the financial industry did to the subprime loans. They took the subprime loans, cut them out into little pieces, packaged them with other loans, subprime loans or regular prime loans, and then repackaged them, split them into different tranches, and then sold and started trading these things. Okay, so they're basically like futures or securities. But futures and securities are regulated by the SEC and whatever else regulates the futures. These things are completely unregulated, and basically they went ahead and just started trading these things, and we found out that the collateral, the underlying collateral to some of these were in fact the subprime loans, and that's what the toxic assets were. So when these banks started trading these these derivatives back and forth, that's completely unregulated. The government had nothing to do with that. So for you to say that this is a government created crisis is just, I don't know. I mean, you really need to figure out what Fannie and Freddie actually do. You really need to figure out what Federal Reserve does, and you really need to figure out what toxic assets even mean before you come and talk about how the government's responsible. Because like, people like you know what I'm saying? You go out and say that the government is responsible for the BP spill or something else like that. Just because the government didn't stop them doesn't mean the government went out and did it. You know what I'm saying? It's pretty simple concept, but I'm surprised even to this day, 2 years after the fact, nobody that's on the other side knows this.